All right, welcome to this edition of the Justice Team Podcast. And today we're going to talk about something very useful in all of our practices, and that's how to kind of win your case at mediation and get max amount of dollars. And we have very esteemed guests today who have one who's now a full-time mediator, right, Craig? Full-time?
Yeah.
So Craig Hartsuyker.
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 There you go.
Who was the law firm name of Farmers, right?
I was one time, yeah.
So, so that being you're the managing attorney at Farmers in Southern California.
So I was the regional head of litigation. So I had about 10 managing attorneys throughout the state. So we had a lot of files.
Yeah, we sent a lot of, you guys were on South Flower back in the day and go through that little spinny thing to go. The parking lot feature was a pain in the ass, but all your mail went to Oklahoma, another pain in the ass. You were there for that.
The Oklahoma?
Yeah.
Yeah. About that. I might be a little older than that. But.
Oh, there you go. So, and then we also have Ryan Conger, and Ryan you were a partner at Lewis Brisbois, or you walked? And then he walked from Big Law.
That's right. Started my own thing, I think, in 2014 or 15.
Wow, never looked back. And Ryan, we handle a lot of complex cases together, but Ryan is the master negotiator, does something we call damages stew, and it does very well. Both these guys know how to leverage mediations to get max amount of dollars. Okay, so we're going to start here. So a lot of listeners are law school lawyers, and they're going to be listening like, I thought I just read a mediation brief and get paid. Is that right? What mistakes are they making?
No, I think it's funny that you said win at mediation, because I think a lot of trial lawyers will always say, you can't really win a mediation, but I think you kind of can.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, by getting that thing teed up properly in advance, and the mediation starts long before the actual mediation.
Mm-hmm.
I think it starts with what Keith Bremer always calls the coffee talk or the soft talk. You call up defense counsel and kind of lay yourself a roadmap for the case and keep that open line of communication so there's no surprises at mediation.
Yeah, and I'd come at it from a couple different angles here. So the preparation going into a mediation, you're not only preparing yourself, your client, you're preparing the other side too. Mm-hmm. And when you're talking about insurance companies, there's a lag time for what they need to digest the information long before they get to the mediation. If it's a surprise to the defense counsel and the insurance carrier when they're at mediation, they probably don't have enough money.
And it's probably mediation over, try to reconvene.
Well, yeah, that, and you know what? You're not going to get full value for your case. Yeah. I mean, they came in with a certain expectation of what that value was. They've got layers of authority that they've got to get through. They prepared for one mediation, and if you haven't prepared them fully, the other side, then there's not going to be enough money.
So let's talk about that. Like, what do they do? Let's talk about a litigated case, because not very often we have this pre-mediation or pre-litigation mediation. You're in litigation. You're not at expert discovery yet. It's looming. The trial date's maybe 6-9 months, sometimes 12 months in the future. What are some things that these lawyers should be doing in advance up until, like practical tips up until that mediation? Let's start with this. How do you select your mediator?
So I think that
other than call your office,
there's different. Well,
I'd
love to be part of the discussion.
This is where you put your cell phone.
Yeah, exactly. But I think part of that discussion is it depends. Who you want your mediator to be. Do you need them to be advocating for your side of the case? If you've got a really great case, you probably want defense counsel to pick their case, right?
Yeah.
If you've got not such a great case and you have some explaining to do, then you might want somebody that can kind of broker in between. So it depends on what kind of case you have and what kind of relationship you have with the different mediators out there. Some help you more than others, depending on.
For sure, and I think you can a lot of times predict the problem. If a case should settle and it's not settling, there's usually a reason. There's somebody out there, whether it's somebody with the insurance company, whether it's defense counsel, whether it's an expert who's gone too far out on a limb, but sometimes it's your client.
It's your client. It's our client.
And so if your client is the problem and the reason why the case isn't settling, that may be reason to get a different type of mediator. There's guys who will beat up on your client a little bit.
And that's what Ryan calls it, the mediation within the mediation. He's doing two different mediations, one about the case, one with the client. I think there's one mediator, she's fabulous, comes to my mind, and she will just grind your client down to like nothing. It didn't work. Like sometimes you need that, right?
Sometimes you do.
It's like
And
full
sometimes I
equilibrium.
think the case calls for a retired judge. There are certain situations where one side or the other is going to respect that gravitas of a retired judge, and sometimes the case does not call for a retired judge. It calls for somebody who's a businessman and understands policies and politics of the
And also,
carrier.
it depends on who the carrier is, right, Craig? I mean, because carriers listen to certain mediators.
It does. That's true. But I think a good mediator though can kind of, if they know the racket on both sides, and So I don't know if I mentioned. So Bob, I'm working with Mike Alder too. I think did we talk about that? Yeah. So I'm working with Mike as well. So Mike's valuation of a case and my valuation of a case are often different. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish by your case and what kind of case you have and who you want to pick out of that. I think you can do a lot of different things with mediators that grind if you need that. If you need somebody that understands the insurance companies, understands the defense counsel, and understands the politics behind that, then you want to get somebody that's got that kind of experience.
And
3 Ps: the people, the politics, and the policy limits.
Oh, look at
I
that.
don't even think about
Those are
that.
good ones. Yeah.
I probably back to OPP, the old, hip hop. So, sometimes it also, leveraging your communities and who's the best fit for that case. Because sometimes like a sexual assault case is different than a PI case. Who's going to be able to handle those? For us, we do a lot of above contractual limits, open policy, bad faith leading up cases. And that sometimes you got to have, I like to have ex-defense lawyers on as mediators in those cases because they understand what's in the claims file and how to leverage, if you need to,
Right.
those extra contractual dollars or what exists.
And there's some mediators out there who specialized in bad faith when they were practicing, and those guys are great too. One thing I want to say that I've been focusing on, and it should be obvious, but I actually think for young lawyers, this is important to understand. Your case is a lot of times all about credibility. You tell your client that, hey, we win this case based on your credibility. You have to be credible. But I think in mediation, the lawyer's credibility is super important. When I start the mediation, I don't come in hot, 100% advocating every single fact of the case. I tell the mediator that I understand the downsides of my case and get on the same page as the mediator. And mediators are people too. I think if they like you and they find your position to be credible, just inherently, I think they fight a little bit harder for you.
And I think, on all these cases, there's some gray area, right? Like your valuation of a case, Bob, might be a little different than mine. Hopefully, that lands in the gray area versus the extreme positions I see, sides take a lot when we, come in to mediate a case. And, trying to get them immediately off those extreme positions and into that gray area.
Well, that's where you do your work.
Exactly.
So I always say I always just say, here's our conceptual in my mind where the bracket where the case should be. I know where the defense's bracket is. And if they ever start to intertwine, that's where you got to do your work.
Yeah.
Craig.
And you can settle a case if they intertwine.
Yeah. Or if they even get close enough. But, let's first talk about, for our listeners, what work do you need to do in advance of the mediation? We're talking educating the defense and their carrier, right? And how much before the mediation do you have to do that stuff?
Yeah. So that second thing is super important, right? So I think a lot of times folks think, hey, look, I'll get the mediation brief or I'll get the information to the other side, a week ahead of time and, we'll all be good, right?
It's too late.
It's too late.
Really?
It's way too late. A week ahead of time, it cannot, especially on a high value case. If it's under $100,000, hey, no sweat, right? No big deal. There's a lot of adjusters out there that have under $100,000 in authority. When you start getting to higher levels, 250 and above, there's fewer and fewer people in insurance company that typically have that kind of authority. And if you're looking at $1 million plus case, it's probably going to vice presidents in order to get authority. So, if that's got to go up through the chain. I spent 3 years managing a catastrophic claims group of claims people, about 100. And the layers that it would have to go through the case in order to roundtable just to me was the adjuster, a supervisor, a regional, and then to me. And then I'd make a decision on
So when they say we got a round table, they're not kidding.
They're not kidding,
I thought it was just a delay tactic.
Yeah, I would say it's 60 days is ideal, at least 30.
Yeah, and a minimum, I would say 30, you can do it in 30 days. But if you think it can be done in a week or two, it can't. And so you're just shortchanging yourself, and what the other side's going to bring to the table if you're doing it in the last couple of weeks before mediation.
You can't get paid for stuff they don't know about.
Well,
well, be specific, Ryan. Like, what stuff are you sending 30, 60 days in advance to make sure they've set their reserves and they're come with money?
Yeah, medical reports. I mean, if you're going to do a deposition that you think matters, you got to do that. You got to get the transcript. You got to make sure that any bills and records, if you've got an important medical document, you got to get that to them. If you're going to depose a witness or something that's going to be really good for you, let's say on liability, or even a damages witness, frankly, anything that's going to change the potentially value of the case, you got to do all those things, 60 days in advance. I always schedule, by the way. I ask, and some defense lawyers get a little cagey about it, but most totally understand. I say, when is your pre-trial or your pre-mediation report due? Because I need to get the stuff to you a few days before you write that thing.
And I want to write it for you.
And I say
that's a great point.
And I say also, do you know yet when your pre-mediation roundtable is? Because sometimes you just can't control it. You might get something last minute. The schedule just didn't work. But at least want to get it to them before that. And I always schedule a pre-mediation phone call with defense counsel before they do their roundtable, just to say, hey, do you have all the bills and records? Are we looking at the same economics here?
And do you calendar all that ahead of time to make sure it pings you?
I try to, yeah.
And see, that's why, and Ryan, do you expect, so when do you think is the right, I know this is such a loaded question, but in these, let's bring up the higher value cases. When's the right time to mediate those cases?
So I think that you've got to get it at issue, right? So you've got to have all the medical records, understand what the future medical care is going to be, right? Once you have, that's just a kind of a baseline. But on these high value cases too, there's always an issue, right? We take these cases, whether it's the defense side or the plaintiff side, you take these cases and there's an issue in the case, whether it's liability, whether it's causation on the injuries, there's an issue. All right.
Or coverage sometimes.
There could be, coverage is
a whole different animal.
Yeah, a whole different animal, right? Like a lot of times you may get a death case, but you only have a $50,000 policy on that side. I mean, what are you
who's fighting, who's indemnifying who, and sometimes when they say, hey, we got to sort this out amongst us before we go to mediation, it's got to be sorted out.
But I think what Ryan, to your point, is talking about if you can identify that issue though and have a conversation with the other side. Hey, look, we recognize that this is the issue in the case. Let's talk about our perspective on it and your perspective on it. Let's clear it up so you can take it to your adjuster or your insurance company and explain to them, hey, their position is on this issue that's the crux of the case, and then they can make a risk analysis on the other side and get the proper money.
And that's so I think boils down to educate the other side, be an open book about it. If you want to have them to open their checkbook, right, be an open book about it. So it's education first, not holding any cards back, unless you want to sandbag the mediation and force a trial, which I think is silly. You're not doing a service to your client.
Just expensive.
You got to remember.
Sometimes I use mediation as just a focus group, an expensive focus group, or to figure out like the side they're taking.
I think you got to remember too. First of all, the plaintiff lawyer most of the time has had the case a lot longer than the defense lawyer, so you know the facts much more intimately. Also, you're the one who's building the case. It's your vision that you're looking at. So you've got to explain that to them. It may not, don't just assume that what you see is what they see. There's so many times where I think I have a conversation with defense counsel and kind of enlighten them and bring them up to speed. And they don't often go like, oh, now I get it. Yeah, I'm going to get you a ton of money. But you can tell it's sinking in a little bit. It's kind of like when you get an argument with your spouse and they're not going to tell you were right then on the spot. But later on, you kind of go, oh, yeah, you got it.
Well, they won't ever say that.
Yeah, and I think kind of explaining the risk, right? Sometimes that risk analysis doesn't get through to the upper echelons of what are the claims.
And sometimes you outline that risk in your letter that you're sending to the defense lawyer that they're going to put into their write-up for value. Because you can even put, here's our outline of the case, here's why we think your risk analysis is here, here's some. Grant, do you put similar verdicts or settlements in there too sometimes?
Sometimes I do. I try not to be too kind of crazy of an advocate when I'm talking to the defense. I think it takes away your credibility.
Craig, but what tools though does the claims folk need to have or see like what's the driver for them? Is it the economics? Like what do they want to see come off the chain to them to make them move that needle?
Yeah. So, sometimes I hear when I'm talking to whether it's a plaintiff's PI firm in particular, like, oh, the evil insurance companies and I think that narrative is stupid, right?
Most defense lawyers and adjusters are good friends.
Yeah, exactly. They're good people for the most part, right? And are there some bad folks there that, but that's true in both any sides, industry you work in.
I think there's probably more bad folks on our side.
Yeah. So, that narrative that, just doesn't, hold a lot of ground with me. But sometimes they're super busy, right? Mm-hmm. And they get behind like everybody else. And it's not that they don't want to pay they want to do a good job, and they want to keep their jobs and look good in what they do. So you can help them look good.
So that's the other point.
Spoon feed them the information.
So how do you a lot of times the defense lawyer also wants to get it done.
Yeah. I mean, I had an adjuster back when I was on the defense side one time told me the only type, I'm sure Craig's heard this, the only type of good file is a closed file. That's what they say. So they're motivated to close the case, but it's all CYA for them. They just they don't want to get audited or have somebody look back at the file and say, you did what? You paid what? We were talking about this before we started. I honestly, I don't know if you totally agree with me on this, but I honestly felt like sometimes if you gave the person at the insurance company the choice, we can settle this case now for $750,000, but we don't have all the boxes checked and we don't have all the information in the event we got audited later, or we can settle it later for $1 million, but every box is going to be checked and we covered everything. I think they choose option number 2.
Oh yeah. Has to be.
Yeah, but
you don't have to say anything.
But you know what though, they do want to close files. Think about most files as they get older get more expensive, right? Mm-hmm. To insurance companies, right? That expense is both in carrying costs of the employees that they may have, whether it's claims people or staff counsel, right? But it's also just ordinary expenses. Now you think, oh, they've got millions upon millions of dollars. It's not that big a deal. But they've also got thousands of litigated cases. So those millions of dollars add up, right?
So you're talking about litigation costs and all the stuff.
They want to close a case.
Well, I always thought it was just like they had a blank check for just the litigation costs. We'll hire whatever experts. We're seeing 6 experts on every case and just does it cut. But it's 2 different pots. Like why don't they consider the whole of that?
So I think on an individual defense counsel level, I think that's more true. But when you get to a more regional level and you're looking at the whole book of business, expert costs are millions of dollars to an insurance company. You're talking about bigger insurance companies. They might be $50 or $100 million.
Wow.
So we're just talking about expert fees. Then you've got court reporting costs and everything else. All those things add up. They want to close their file. Give them a reason to.
So, the takeaway for the first half of this portion of this podcast is educate your other side, do it nicely, give them information to be able to set their reserves. Now let's get into the mediation aspect. Let's have a case now where a lot of times new counsel has been brought in for the plaintiff. Maybe the reserves are set very low because the first plaintiff lawyer demanded half the value of the case. They didn't know how to negotiate, and all of a sudden you go to mediation and the new lawyer is demanding 4 times what the prior lawyer did, and the reserves are set much lower.
Right.
How do we then get more than that original lawyer demanded? That's like a fucking drill law on the line in the sand that sometimes is a big impediment for us.
And it shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be, but it is.
Here's the rub on that is most carriers have a philosophy that you shouldn't change the reserve unless you get new information.
That's it. New information. You need new information.
So give them the new information.
What new information we talk about, guys?
So
what's new?
It depends. You step into the case, right? And you said, look, you know what? I didn't tell you about the fact that my client had knee surgery that didn't get conveyed to you. Let me convey it to you now.
Yeah, let's see if we can do a running list of new things that, like we're playing Family Feud. New things that will, the top 5 reasons, the top 100 defense lawyers have voted, the top 5 reasons why reserves have been reset to a higher value. Ryan, first answer on the board is? Surgery. Ding, ding, ding. Surgery sends number one. Number one. Craig, what is also on the board, the top 5?
I would say the other thing is how it changed their life.
Ding, ding, ding. Changing life is very...
Adds to general damages, right?
It's number 5. Education on general damages. Ryan, you're up now. Go ahead.
I would say, I mean, any new, let's say they lost their job. I mean, anytime you're adding economics, so new future wage loss.
Needing more economics, outlining more damages, econs that was not available before shows up on the board as number 4. One that we missed, let's talk about concessions from a defense expert. You get into expert discovery and you're starting getting concessions, or the big liability depositions that change the momentum. So again, these are new facts, right, that set the reserves. So Craig, does it ever matter? Do they ever say, well, new lawyer, new sheriff in town, just on that metric alone, we're going to reset the reserves?
Rarely.
Yep.
Rarely that has an impact. Now, there are some names out there, yours being one of them, Bob, that, carriers kind of flag and say, you know what, his name pops up, I could go through the list, But these lawyers, they pop up and, I well aware of you and others from the defense industry, hey, if these names pop up, let's try to settle this early.
Yeah, because to settle it early, because Ryan, what does that one famous partner of the firm say about our firm?
Oh, they're like the merry band of pirates or something.
They just try cases, don't give a shit.
And the reason
it's great, it's crazy.
From an economic standpoint, you think about it, you don't have that many files that can hurt a carrier. Not really.
Yeah.
So if they settle those cases early, worry about the rest of them.
Yeah. That's true.
I don't know.
They're more worried about like a hailstorm in Oklahoma tearing off some roofs than us hitting like an 8-figure verdict.
Yeah. The property damage aspect of most carriers is way bigger than the indemnity on litigation. Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Property damage to insurance carriers is a humongous number.
Yeah. Did you see? I guess we won't say the carrier, but to just stop. Well, it's been in the news. State Farm stopped writing coverage in California.
We'll see if California lets them do that, though. With the insurance commissioners, there's certain things they can and cannot do. But, be that as it may, just remember, like, the carrier ain't going to be sweating you, beating your chest to try your case and overvaluing it. They're going to be like, well, go ahead. Like, we don't care.
Yeah, right? Not on a single case.
Not on a single case.
No.
Yeah, so, we talked about how things could change the metric. Okay, now you're in the mediation. Let's say we've picked a good mediator that we think can move the needle for us here. Let's talk negotiation tactics. Okay, let's give this hypothetical. So let's work on this. There's a 1 million policy with a 10 million excess. Different carriers. Okay. I want to give you the full value of the case. Well, let's just say that Ryan, the plaintiff lawyer, believes this value of the case to probably be in the 2.5 to 4 range. Like, probably thinks that's what the value of the case is. The defense probably thinks the case 1.5-ish range, 1 to 1.5, right? But demand going in has been policy limits of the full 11. Ryan comes in and says, well, that expired. It's now 13. The defense's top offer has been $500,000.
Let's start with the fact that I wouldn't do that.
Why wouldn't you do that?
I just wouldn't go up. Unless I really needed more money than the policy, I wouldn't go backwards. In a situation like that where I think the value is in the 2s and I had an 11 out there, I would just start at my 11 again. I wouldn't go in the wrong direction because I just think that just gets things off on the wrong foot and rubs them the wrong way. I also would say, okay, you think I'm at 11, you think I'm in funny money because you guys think the case is worth 1.5 or whatever. But we all know that it's worth more than $1 million. So until you tender the first primary carrier, then what incentive do I have to not stay up in la la land too? So tender the 1, and what I do there is I just keep doing brackets and saying I'm not coming off until you tender the 1. I don't want to negotiate with you. And then I'll tell the excess carrier, whatever money they're forcing me to spend off of my 11 right now to get to you is less money that I have to negotiate later with you. So I'll do it. I'll blow some money down if that's what it takes to get past the 1. But just let the excess carrier know that then I'm not going to have a ton of room left to negotiate with them.
Yeah, the one thing about that hypothetical is I think it would be pretty rare that the underlying carrier or the $1 million policy wouldn't pop it pretty quick. They want to kick it over. They want to kick it over to the excess carrier. The last thing they want to do
we
is
see a lot more recently. Let's say it's SIR, that it's a company's first $1 million, and then you get into the 10 million excess.
Yeah. So I think there too, where you have a case that's clearly worth more than the SIR, they want to kick it over too, so that they can kick the expenses to the excess carrier.
Interesting. Because a lot of times we struggle where it's like we're not even in excess yet, or we show up to the mediation. It's like, well, we just have the SIR or the first million. And
They've got a good argument though. If they've got an SIR though, to say, hey, listen, we're putting up our million. You know, if you want to stick and not pay any money on this, it's on you now. You know, to take over.
Yeah, so walk through our, you know,
It depends on the coverage.
So that
position
dynamic,
too.
we're talking about first layer, then tendering and second layer. What does that all mean as far as a negotiation or a leverage standpoint?
So, you know, particularly when you have, and the hypothetical you posed was $1 million and a $10 million excess with a different company.
Yep.
Right. So the underlying carrier, they want to just protect themselves, that they cap it at the $1 million policy limit. So they never pay more than that. You know, they don't want to risk, you know, letting the excess carrier off the hook, you know, for a case that potentially has, you know, a significant value of, you know, more than twice what their policy limit is. You know, that they didn't price for it, they didn't get the premium for it, you know, and so they want to make sure that, hey, they can get that done quickly, pay the $1 million. So you need to leverage that and say, hey, look, you know, and give them enough incentive to pop the million and move on.
Change the facts a little bit. $1 million policy, say a $5 million, doesn't matter, it's a $5 million, say on top, different companies. The case is worth borderline though $1 million.
Yeah, I was going to say that other
That's
hypothetical gets
yeah.
more interesting if the policy was 2, but this is the same difference.
Yeah.
So now you want your best friend is the excess carrier there to push down on these other guys to tender their
Well,
policy.
how do you get this excess carrier to push down on the first carrier? So say Ryan, you've done your now, you think this case is worth, you'd take $800,000, but you think in this scenario that how do you get over
it's a
the
one
million?
level fusion or something like that, or like a disc replacement, whatever. So you got I think you say, look, this thing could be explosive. I mean, that's where you start talking about your other verdicts, by the way. You go, look, I'm not saying this particular case on paper has a blue book value of $2 million, but we've hit these things for 4 and 5 and 6 and 7. So excess carrier, are you
11
gonna let,
and 17, we did a couple of
that's
them.
right. Are you going to let these guys be cowboys with your money, right? Because they're trying to pinch pennies to get this thing done at 8 or 8.50. But if we hit it, we're going to hit it for 5. And it's going to be 4 of yours and only another 150.
So then what do you do to get that excess to put leverage on the first?
Yeah. By the same token, though, the excess carrier is in the position to say, yeah, you know what, go ahead, let them.
Because it's your money.
Let them bargain, right?
Yeah.
They bargain too hard, it's all their money.
Right.
So how does that work? What does that mean? It's all whose money? The first million?
So-
Primary.
The primary,
Because
right.
they committed. I don't think it's technically called bad faith at that point, but what do you? There's a case on that. What do you guys call that?
Well,
The
whether you're
Nanya case.
yeah, whether you're opening up the policy or not, right?
Yeah. So I mean, what's the best mediation tactic? If you're in mediation, you have this in play, single level, double level fusion, whatever it is you have. They're offering below the first million. You're sitting there with excess. You know excess is in the room.
Right. Well, let's start with that. If excess is there, I'm
Great.
assuming that they're there.
But if you know, Craig, on your end, that the primary's fighting to even tender their million. They're fighting you.
And I think as a mediator, though, you have to recognize that dynamic and talk to the claims folks on the underlying policy and say, look, at the end of the day, we both know that you're going to tender your policy. And you're not going to take the risk on a case that, and maybe it's worth $1.2 million, $1.5 million, whatever it is. You're not going to take the risk of expending the money to continue to litigate this case for another $150,000, $200,000, only to potentially, most likely, pay your policy and potentially more. Right?
Here's all I'm handling.
So you can get the money on the underlying, and now the mediation's with the excess carrier.
Here's how I'm handling it. In that very first Zoom, I'm going to say, even before we go on the mediation, I'm going to call Craig before anybody's on there. My
Is
client's
Craig
on
the
there.
mediator?
Yeah,
in the
Craig's the
situation?
mediator, and I'm going to say, Craig, I need all of the underlying and a little bit of the excess, and I'm going to go make some phone calls and do some other stuff.
And then what is that other stuff that you do?
Just cook up some soup.
Pick up some damages soup, and then that's what you use, educate the carrier, and then you tell excess. What is it? What's the pucker? If you're in this you got one and they got 5 on top of the excess. Where does the excess really start to have to fucking hammer them? Where's your demand got to be from the plaintiff for them to be like, guys, you got to give us that first $1 million so we can get this done?
So I think one of the issues that the hypothetical you posed was the excess carrier is actually there at the mediation.
But it's a hostile situation.
Right. But a lot of times, right, the excess carrier is not in the loop, So you're negotiating at a mediation with the underlying carrier and there's an excess policy, but they're either not at the mediation, they haven't been educated, whether it's the plaintiff's side or the defense counsel, nobody's really got them, engaged in the process. And so all of a sudden you get the $1 million. You don't want to take just $1 million. You think you can get another $200,000, $500,000 out of it, but nobody in the room has really communicated with the excess carrier. So making sure you have them at the table when they're involved.
So it's just such an interesting thing to know in advance and to make sure you know when you get there, because it either direction, it tips somebody's hand, right? So if the excess carrier is there, I think maybe not always, but presumably they're there with some money to settle the case, maybe not always. And by the same token, if they're not there and you've been saying you need over the $1 million the whole time, and then you continue to negotiate knowing that they're not there, you're kind of tipping your hand that you can settle the case for under $1 million.
There you got a good practice tip. So if the excess isn't there, Ryan, and you could probably get more if the excess knows what's going on, what do you do in that mediation?
I think you just say, hey, if excess isn't here, we're not going to be able to get this case settled today. Maybe we could sit here and until we can figure out if they're going to tender their $1 million. We at least get that out of the way and move on to the excess, but just make sure it's transparent to everyone in that room that I cannot settle this case today because there's not enough money here.
And I would tell you, don't be afraid to walk. If you're the first hour into the mediation, you figure out that that's the case. If you've got that kind of case, close it down. Talk to the mediator and say, listen, look, we paid you for a day. We understand that,
We'll
but can we come back? And most of the mediators, when you have a good relationship with them, will be, hey, look, fine. We'll schedule another day when you've got all your ducks in a row. Happy to do it. And those mediators know that that's a continuing source of referrals, and they want to get cases settled.
And what on our end, we're dealing with our client. I usually tell our clients, and Ryan, I'd like to hear your advice on this. What do we tell our clients? I usually tell them, do not expect that we're going to resolve this at this mediation. I always tell them, don't
always.
ever,
Especially now, something happened during COVID where now mediation day is no longer like the day to settle the case. It seems like the carriers show up to find out what you would take, and then they go back and do the work to get that money. I often thought maybe this whole mediation thing might change and that mediations become like 1 hour. And so all the work gets done in advance, everything gets teed up, you show up at the mediation. If they've got the money, if they really have the money, you should be able to get it done. If they don't, and they're there to just kind of learn and maybe go back and forth a couple times and position the case to settle later with some phone calls, that's fine. I don't need to be there for a full day. Everything always happens in the last hour anyway.
The other thing too is I find too when a mediated case is in, it doesn't resolve during the mediation. I'm always happy to in the ensuing weeks continue to have conversations with both sides. It's pretty normal stuff.
And I think a good mediator gives you his or her cell phone number.
Yep.
Yeah, right. That's where everything's happening now. Is not the work in the phones afterwards.
Yeah, and they, the mediators typically, tend to start to have good relationships with both sides, so that they can open up the communications and talk to both of them in a reasonable way, and and that's how these cases get resolved. Is everybody gets off their,
high horse,
their high horse, and realize, okay, well, Craig's, I understand who Craig is, and he understands the gray areas and the politics of this thing, and he's not steering me wrong, right?
Yeah, and you got to trust your mirror. Like during the podcast, checking my phone because I have a mediation that's back. It's in Boston, and we're hopefully going to wrap it up right now. But I trusted my mediator to tell me that we're going to get to a certain amount. There's all kind of excess issues and coverage stuff, but we had 2 mediations, and he said by Thursday we were almost there. We're like $150K away to get to $3 million, but you have to trust that the mediator is telling you things when he says, look, I can't tell you this is confidential. I just can tell you that it's probably good for you, that this new fact that unveiled, you just got to trust the process a lot of the times. But that's where you do your homework on making sure that trust level is there. So in this hypothetical $1 million with $5 million excess, it's worth maybe $800K. Ryan, let's say it stalls like this. They put up $750K. You're at $3 million. You know where you want this thing to land. You told Craig on that call.
Right.
You wanted the $1 million and a little sugar.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What do you do after you walk out of that mediation? You know, and client wants to settle, probably in case you don't want to try. What do you do when you walk out of there?
You let it sit. You trust your mediator to work the phones on that thing. And, if you have a good relationship with defense counsel, maybe even reach out directly to defense counsel and say, hey, where was the breakdown? But I do think it's important in that situation to make sure that the mediator knows that you're reaching out to defense counsel so that the message does not become inconsistent, right? So, but that's what I do, is call and say, hey, what do you need? Or I ask the mediator, find out what do they need to get this thing over the hump.
And sometimes, Craig, like, do you ever tell the lawyers, like the plaintiff side, hey, put a demand in writing? You have to do something in writing after this mediation.
Yeah. Sometimes, but you know what? Oftentimes, to your point, right, is I will tell both sides, hey, look, I'd like to hold this open, and call you both to see if I can discuss your positions a little bit more after the mediations and see if we can't make some progress, right? And when you're up front with both sides and they say, okay, yeah, that sounds reasonable. You can call me on the phone, Craig,
I love this.
They say, okay, yeah, great. I'll keep it open and we'll continue to have conversations and, let everybody sit for a couple of days.
So we're almost out of time on this podcast. This is the one last topic we're going to talk about for the last 5 minutes here. I'm going to talk about the use of midpoints. Does such a thing exist? Do the insurance companies really beholden to them when they say, I'm going to give you this offer, but don't look at the midpoint? Is this a real thing?
I don't love them. I think that they get used a lot. I think it's a little bit. I don't want to say lazy, but it's lazy negotiations on both sides and or from the mediator.
We Brian and I've done a few mediations, and like after move 2, they'll be like, we'll just negotiate, we're up real high, and they're like, okay, we'll do this bracket. If you go to 10 million, we'll go to 5. And we're like, these idiots just told us they have at least 7.5 million. Why would you jump the gun like that? Right? I mean, it's just, those are the mistakes.
We always talk about the midpoint of the midpoints and stuff with the brackets. I like that
and
stuff.
I think people get
fun.
Impatient and they want a trick, and they want to know some predictability, rather than thinking it through and having a conversation about what's the value of the case.
This is why I like the virtual mediations now, because I don't mind the grind. I could be like, I've done a mediation last week where I was like working out for half of it, like, because it was just on the phone, right? It's just, and just doing your thing, and then you get an offer and like, oh, send it back this way. I'm not like stressed out about like the grind of it. I used to be because I was always lazy, but Ryan here, he grinded like 3 a.m. on some of these mediations.
I like it.
It's you're a sadist.
I think it's
I love mediating cases.
Obviously you two do.
It's a language. I think that the way we negotiate in PI cases is so different than any other negotiation. Like if you went to somebody and you wanted to buy their house for $1 million and your opening offer was $25,000, imagine that. But that's what goes on. But in our mediations, that's the normal way it is. It's $1 million case. We open at $5 million and they open at $25,000, and the case somehow still gets resolved. So I think it's a language that if you can be good at speaking it, you can learn a lot in a mediation. Maybe you don't settle your case, but you learn a lot about what the other side's willing to do, and you get a lot closer to settling it. That's why I never leave a mediation, because I'm just there to gain. Once I realize I can't settle it, I just want to get as much information as I can.
And I've mediated cases on every side, and the mediator, defense counsel, all three sides. And I've always taken a shot at trying to short circuit that 5 million versus 25,000. Unfortunately, it is very, very difficult to short circuit that negotiation process. People want to go through it.
Yeah, I always say like when we start to get to those bracket arenas, I always say, look, I could tell him my demand is this, or I give him this bracket. Why don't you just go in there and say, look, plaintiff counsel is not taking less than this. I got the sense you're not here. Can I just do a mediator's bracket for this to get the goalposts closer together? So it's a mediator's idea. Like, because a mediator, I usually I do be a certain point. I have a good rapport. I was like, look, we're not taking less than this, but I know probably $1 million less than that, but working the game a little bit.
So, and I will tell you that depends. Mm-hmm. That depends on the trust level that you as a mediator have with both sides, right? Sometimes I'm working with new counsel, and they may know my name, but they don't know me, right? So that takes a while to build some of that trust, If you've got the trust level, and you can go to both sides and say, look, you know me, I'm not going to bullshit you. Oh, can I say that?
Oh yeah, for sure. You can say whatever the fuck you want. Just not what are the George Carlin other 7 deadly words? You can't say a few words on here, but that one's
So
okay.
I'm not going to bullshit you. You know, the reasonable value of this case is in this range, right? So I get that you're demanding $5 million and you're at $25,000, but look, you know what? There's a reasonableness to this case, and let's get there sooner rather than later so we can actually resolve it. That if you've got the trust on both sides, that works.
It works.
But sometimes you got to spend several hours kind of building some of your, and teaching people who you are, like as a mediator.
Well, that's why I do, appreciate whenever we go to these legal conferences and events that you see mediators there on both sides of the table, letting you know who they are. Because the trust factor to me is critical. Because if Ryan says you as a lawyer, your credibility is on the table at mediation.
Yeah.
It is, and I think that's very important. Any other parting wisdom here, gentlemen, as we mediate our ways out of here? Do you ever mediate to meditate or meditate to mediate?
I have to meditate after I mediate.
Do you mediate farmers' cases?
No, I have, but no, not regularly.
If both sides agree, though. I mean,
if both sides agree, I could. Yeah, there's no reason why I couldn't.
I would use you on a farmer's case in a heartbeat. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm not so sure they would feel the same way, though. So.
Yeah. Now, if you have a strong case, you got a good case, just the mediator's got to be able to project that for you as well. Cool. Well, any parting words of wisdom? Ryan, I'll let you go first. Don't talk about cherry tomatoes.
No, I just think everything we talked about, I mean, it's just about communication, education. Like Craig said, the other side is not the bad guy. Oftentimes, the defense lawyer is your best friend.
Yep.
I mean, he's your voice in that room. So, make sure that he's all loaded up so that he can be a good voice for you.
Yeah. And I would say take the time to get the other side the information early. Give them a chance to do a good job, and then, as a mediator, build relationships with the folks on both sides, right? Not one side or the other. It's about both sides, right? So you're trying to build relationships so both sides will listen to reasonableness, right? That's where you're trying to get this case into that gray area.
And I think in the world of the virtual world, a lot of people beat their chest too much, and then as soon as people meet each other in person, it's a different wall to break down. So I say, I started counsel. Look, if you want to get together and have a few whiskeys together and talk about the case, we could do that. And you'd be surprised how often relationships develop and cases resolve just because you put down that armor and get to the real value of the case.
Yeah.
Right?
You know what I would say, though, building those relationships, though, doesn't solve just that case. It solves the next 10 cases or 100 cases.
And you get referrals from those defense lawyers, too. For the
people, the politics, and the policy limits.
And there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning into this edition of the 3 Ps. Actually, Chris Dolan has 3 different Ps why he takes a case. It's like either public interest. The last one is it pisses him off. I forget the other P, but whatever. So if you have any questions, go to justicesteamnetwork.com. We'll be happy to handle any issue or case or consultation that you may have. Or if you want to be on the show, just let us know. And off we go. Thank you guys for this edition of the Justice Team Podcast. Thank you, Craig and Ryan.
Thanks, Bob.